What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? Come over on the grass here, folks. Come around over here on the grass. Come around over here on the grass. Those of you who are still coming into the park. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Come on in over on the grass here. Those of you who are still coming into the park. Come on in over on the grass here. There's lots of room over here. Here, folks. Okay, thanks to our answer friends, we're getting a more powerful sound here. Organize this demonstration here today. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the rebirth of the anti-war movement. I know that many of you, along with myself, were disgusted that our anti-war movement was appropriated lock, stock, and barrel by the Democratic Party for the last couple of years. And what has it gotten us? We have got a record military budget, not thanks to George W. Bush, but thanks to our sitting president. We have got a $30 billion surge into Afghanistan. We've got schools in this country that are not getting the funding they need. Mass transit not getting the funding that's needed. People being thrown out of their homes at the same time. Record military spending and a bailout to the banks. And when both parties talk about health care, they say there isn't enough money. That's a lie. That is a lie. None of them are talking about cutting the military budget. Instead, we have the largest military budget in the United States and indeed in world history, thanks to the sitting president. But we are rebuilding the anti-war movement on a much more solid basis. We are building it on the basis that only the people will stop the wars. Only the people will stop the war. Neither party has ever stopped the wars. It was the people who stopped the Vietnam War, and we need to relearn the lessons of that movement. To remember, I only read this in the history books, the anti-war movement back in the
the day said half the way with Lyndon Baines Johnson to stop the war. And what they got in exchange was an escalation of the Vietnam War. Many in our own present-day movement said, oh, let's go then to the voting booth. We'll get an anti-war movement that way. And what has it gotten us? What has it gotten us? And every single leader in the peace movement who counseled that we should put all our energies into the voting booth, they should be hanging their heads in shame. Because it's not only a surge into Afghanistan that we've gotten, it's not only a continued occupation of Iraq that we've got an expansion of the war into Pakistan, into Somalia, into Yemen, and most recently, those of you who are watching the news in Palestine, an expansion of settlements. What has the president done about the expansion of settlements? Nothing. Nothing. So if we're going to rebuild the anti-war movement, we have to do it. Now I, along with probably every single person here, thought this demonstration tonight should have been 100 times as large. We know that. Let's not fool ourselves. We need larger demonstrations. Those of you who are joining me in Washington, D.C. at the demonstration organized by Answer, we have to thank them for putting together the first unified national march on D.C. in several years. Beyond turning out in large numbers, we need more than that, because we know that people turned out in large numbers against the Vietnam War, and that wasn't enough. It was an important start, but it wasn't enough. We know that our demonstrating has got to turn into resistance, and that's why we need to support those anti-war veterans and serving service members who are coming against the war. We've got to defend them. That's our job as a civilian peace movement, to have the backs of Iraq veterans against the war. And we must stand up for civil liberties, because we know that we cannot build an effective anti-war movement or people's movement in general without our civil liberties. And God damn it, pardon my French, this sitting mayor has done everything he could to curb our civil liberties at every turn. And if the current president, rather than repealing the Patriot Act, has chosen to support it, has chosen to support things like extraordinary rendition. He said he's going to close Guantanamo. Instead, we've got not only Guantanamo still, but Guantanamo on the Mississippi. He said he's against torture, and yet he continues extraordinary rendition, which is simply subcontracting torture to other countries like Morocco and Egypt and others. On these and so many other issues, if we're going to have genuine change, we need to be leading that change. And I'm going to close on this, give the microphone over to our Answer friends in just a moment. In this time of economic crisis, we cannot allow ourselves to be divided against each other. It is a real danger in this country today that anti-immigrant prejudice is so popular that people are not giving a second thought to the raids and deportations which continue. If they're allowed to go after the immigrants, who else is next? We need to stand up for every group within this country and those who want to come here, because if we allow them to divide ourselves, then we're all going down. So with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to my good friend John Beecham. This Answer Coalition Answer has been leading not only the organizing of the march in D.C., but also the buses going there, beginning tomorrow night. That lovely 15-hour bus ride. Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Andy. Sisters and brothers, give yourselves a hand tonight into the streets to protest this war. There is nothing as important as the people responding on the anniversaries of these criminal wars than coming out into the streets and protesting. We cannot let one anniversary go by without flooding out into the streets and standing up for our sisters and brothers in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Palestine, and in Haiti, and everywhere in the world that the U.S. is trying to dominate another people. We must be out in the streets and raise our flags and our banners up in solidarity with them. This 8 years plus long war is not only a crime for what it's doing to our sisters and brothers in the countries and in the lands I just mentioned, it's a crime for what it's doing to people here. Washington, whether Democrat or Republican, whatever administration it is, falls over itself in order to give money to the banks, to serve the banks, and to give money to the Pentagon. Every single dollar spent on this war is money that's not being spent on our health care, our schools, it's jobs we're losing, and in every single one of our communities in Chicago and across this country right now, the crime is being carried out in thousands of ways. And for the most part, it goes like this. When we need education, when we need jobs, when we need housing, when we need equality, the government says, not now. There's not enough money. Sisters and brothers, that's a lie. And no one in the White House, whoever it is, who's ever occupying that mansion in Washington, is going to take the people's side. We must take our own side and build our movement and build our organizations and continue to build the kind of movement. We need to build the kind of movement, sisters and brothers, that will bring this country to a standstill until every single troop comes home and we get money for jobs, education, and health care. And on March 20th, 2 days from now, people will be converging from all over the country on Washington to stand strong and stand together. We're going to start at the White House. We're going to march to some of the corporate war profiteers and make our voices heard on their doorstep. We're descending on Washington to keep this movement strong, to bring as many people as we possibly can to the seat of power, because nothing will end the war, nothing will bring us people's justice other than our own efforts and our own struggles and our united movement against war, racism, and oppression. So let's stay together, sisters and brothers. Let's stay strong. Let's do everything we can to have each other's backs and build solidarity and big strength. All out for the March on Washington. We will win, sisters and brothers. Every one of you in this park is on the right side of history. The warmongers and the banks, they're on the wrong side of history, and their day is coming. Let's keep building the movement, sisters and brothers. Stay strong and stay together.
Juan Torres, if you could come to the front, please.
Right here. Okay.
Juan Torres.
He's coming. Andy's coming.
Ladies and film coming out, which is going to be premiering here in Chicago sometime next month. Watch for it. Juan Torres.
Okay, I give you all the responsibility for Andy about my son documentary. I want to see the reality. How my son is dying. My son is dying about the pill. The name is Lariam. The Lariam who's the military giving to soldiers for the malaria. Now, after 4 year fight, personal investigation. Now the military, they take the Ilarian out. For the military is out, no more to the soldiers. Plus America, they take it out for USA, they build. Now a suit for the government and the Roche company. Everything is positive, you know, for the suit, lawsuit. And I already see the documentary. I think it's very, very important. My son documentary is for Smile Production from New Zealand. This is the group who's taken for distribution around the world for TV documentary. They selection the over 230 documentary and movie and TV documentary over 230. They selection just 12. And these 12, they included my son documentary. It's very wonderful and say how the government, they lied to the kid, and the personal investigation, we open how the government, they don't say never the truth to the soldiers, what the circumstance they die. Thank you, and I see you tomorrow, and sorry, Saturday, everybody in Washington. Thank you so much.
Tonight, we'd ask people to put the signs that are not your own, or the flags that are not your own, if you could just put them in the northeast corner of the park as you leave. That would help us, those of us who are going to be spending, unfortunately, a few hours cleaning this stuff up. Thanks so much for coming out tonight.